Today, we're diving into the world of handling errors in Apex. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and let's learn how to handle errors like pros. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on more helpful content. Hi, I'm Simon, and I'm a developer from Smoothstack. Why should you bother with all of this error handling nonsense? Well, first, it makes your code more robust, and second, it saves you from pulling your hair out when something inevitably goes wrong. First things first, let's demystify those error messages that look like they were written in an alien language. You've got NullPointerExceptions, LimitExceptions, and let's not forget the classic System.DmlException. Each of those pertains to a distinct set of errors, but we can handle them all if we take the right approach. Now onto the good stuff. We're going to handle these errors like graceful acrobats on a tightrope. Enter the try-catch block. Think of it as your safety net when your code decides to do something unexpected. You try something, and if it goes haywire, you catch it. Simple, right? So if you followed this channel at all, you may remember when we created this My First REST Endpoint class, and we made the getContact method. Now, one spot where we can bump into an error with this method is in the return context to return at index 0 line. Here, if we don't actually get any contacts from this query, then when we try to check the contact at index 0, we're going to get a list index out of bounds error. So to look at that from the workbench, we will see an unfriendly error message appear. It just says Apex error, and then it gives us this list index out of bounds exception. Now, as an end user, that doesn't really tell me much information aside from, hey, the Apex isn't working. So what we would rather do is return a null contact so that the person on the other end of the integration understands that there is no contact with this external ID. Another way that we could determine this is by running a test. If we build robust test classes, then we will test every scenario. So we should have a scenario that says, given no contact exists, should return null. And then when we run this test, we should see a success, but of course we'll see a failure with the way that the method is currently run. And we see that same list index out of bounds 0 error. And in order to avoid that, we can simply add a try-catch block to the problem line. So instead, we'll try returning this, and then catch exception E. It's fairly common practice to just name your exceptions E, and if we catch that exception, we will simply return null. Now, there are some paradigms in which you may want to do more than simply returning null. For this specific method, it makes sense to return null, but other times when you catch exceptions, you might want to create error logs, and we'll get into more detail about that in a later video, but essentially the purpose of creating error logs is to get an idea of when something messed up in the system so that you can go back and audit those records later. But for now, we're just going to return null because that's all that is required for this method to get a more user-friendly result. So with this simple change, let's go ahead and rerun our test class. And here we get a failure because I copy-pasted the first method and didn't assert that our retrieved contact was equal to null. So instead of sticking with our original system asserts, why don't we change those? We'll get retrieved contact is equal to null. We'll save that, and how about we try that one more time? Alright, there we go. And we have a success, so in this case, no contact exists, we haven't added a contact to the data accessor, and our method does not give us null. And then if we want to go ahead and check from the user's end, well, I guess we can just hit execute again. Then instead of Apex error, we get an OK response, but we don't actually see a contact, and that's simply because there is none. So that is the first level to this, but let's take this one tiny step further. So there can be times when you bump into exceptions in attempts to insert or update your records as well. And when you run into those problems, the best way to handle them is, of course, by using a try-catch block, but that makes testing a little bit of an issue. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our contact data accessor, and we're going to demonstrate how we can change the mock data accessor to make it receptive to handling try-catch methods. So the first step is to create a Boolean called throw error or something similar. And then in our update contacts, we can simply say if throw error, then want to throw, oh, we'll need a custom exception for this, I think. Alright, give me just a moment to get in the tank and write that out so I can show you, and then I will be right back. Alright everyone, I am back, and fortunately the fix was pretty easy. So if we want to mock our exception in a test class, all we need to do is create this empty class called mockException that extends the standard exception class. And so for our purposes, we can just write this header, create the class, and it'll do everything we need it to for our test class. And so here we have the mock data accessor, which once again has the throw error boolean, and if we're throwing the error, then we throw the new mock exception, and otherwise we'll be returning the results and setting the list of contacts to the list that we're taking in. And so then to show you what that looks like within the test context, here we have a quick update contact test method, and we have revised the update contact method to use our data accessor and to follow best practices of bulkification. So now we're taking in a list. So I did a little bit of revision on this just to clean it up a little bit and make it work better with our data accessors. And you'll note that if we run this test class, we are covering everything except for what comes in the exception itself. And so we need to make sure that we cover this line, which currently doesn't do anything, but in a later video we'll be talking about generating error logs, and so then we'll want to make sure that that gets covered. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And so to start, we'll just copy this method, and instead of testing what happens when we're given a contact, we'll test what happens when an error is thrown, and it should handle the exception. Then we set mock contact da dot error thrown, I believe is what we called it. Oh, dot throw error. To true. And here we'll add a try catch block to the test class, and then if we catch an error, we will have a Boolean called error thrown, and we'll start it as false, and here we will set it to true. And then since we want to catch the exception within our method, then we don't actually want to enter this block. So we're going to be asserting that error thrown is false. And so we'll just do system assert since it's on a Boolean. And we want to assert not error thrown. And then a new run. Just this method. And we got success. And we'll see that now this method is covered. It doesn't actually say it because it's just a System.debug, but you can trust me, we're covering that line in the method now because we throw the error from the mock data accessor and then it'll get handled here. So that is all for today. I'll see you in the recap. So there you have it, folks. Handling errors in Apex doesn't have to be a snooze fest. With try-catch blocks and successful testing, you'll be juggling errors like a pro in no time. If you've enjoyed this tutorial and had a chuckle or two, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more entertaining and educational Salesforce content. As always, if you have any questions or need help, just leave a comment below. Happy coding, Error Wranglers!